Alright guys, now Ukrainian front lines. I need to clarify the information which is coming from Vuhledar, and mostly it is spread by the pro-Russian channels or the Russian Z propaganda channels. They are saying that the Ukrainian group in Vuhledar has been encircled. But it is not like that for this hour. By the time I'm recording this video, definitely Russia cut the only supply road for Vuhledar, but still there are some of the field roads which are still okay for Ukrainian forces to leave the area. But it seems like Ukrainian forces haven't obtained the order to leave the area, even though Russia uses lots of the aviation bombs to hit Vuhledar. For example, Russians shared this video, and I also shared it on my Telegram channel, of how they are using the FAB 3000. FAB 3000 is the largest aviation bomb Russians have with a gliding module, so it may fly for at least 50 of the kilometers, and it brings lots of the devastation. This time it was spotted in Vuhledar. As you see, the remains of this big building is no more, so Ukrainian army for sure will leave Vuhledar under this huge pressure, but for now our guys are still there. It's just a clarification for you to understand the situation in this very critical point, and in the future Russians will advance further. They need to create a larger gap for their supply line for the railway supplies, because this railway has been hit many times by Ukrainian artillery, so they need to move Ukrainian artillery further away. About the Pokrovsk direction, Russia tries to move every day, and for today they took some of the ground, so it was yesterday and it is today. They moved over here and also in Tsukirny village, and they were trying to encircle Ukrainian forces from this area. It's now understandable for everyone, including me. By the way, I told you about it around 1 week ago that Russia has this particular plan, and now we see that other analytics are saying about this possible outcome. So Russians will advance to Tsukirny. They are already doing it. The fight is ongoing in that village already, and they will move southbound later on. There is just a single war obstacle, a small river. It's not a significant obstacle for the Russian army. Russia advances mostly with their infantry forces, but sometimes they use tanks and also infantry fighting vehicles. With one of those attacks, Russia actually failed in this particular place. From what I know, it happened in those fields. And one more Russian attack failed near Davydov village. It's also the Pokrovsk direction. By the way, my friends, I forgot to say a very important thing. Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. Let's go. So here are the positive news, because Ukraine was successful in nailing the Russian vehicles. The Russian assault mission totally failed this time. They tried to reach Davydov village but unsuccessfully. As you see, in general the ground is very sturdy. It's not yet the rainy season in Ukraine. It comes with October, I would say middle of October or late October. For now both of the armies are free to move across the fields if there are no mines. But at the same time, you may see lots of the holes in those fields. It means that Russia already tried many times to move ahead, but they faced the resistance from the Ukrainian army. In this strike, Russia lost few of the tanks and couple of the armored vehicles, plus lots of the infantry forces. All of that, my friends, I share on my Telegram channel. You may find it in the video description just below. By the way, this is the Russian tank T-72B3. It is the best modification of the T-72 tank, and it was kaboomed with the help of Javelin. Yes, Ukraine has many of the Javelins. And let's go back to the map, because Russians also moved towards Lysivka village and they're getting closer today towards Pokrovsk. Let's measure the distance from the gray area towards the settlement. It's less than 7 kilometers. Yes, they slow down with their movement because Ukraine has some of the defense lines, but sometimes those defense lines do not work properly because they were built with the flows. As for example, it was reported by the Deep State military map source. Here you may see the reservoir that is lying there on the Ukrainian positions, just not yet been set for defense, and I would say that those trenches are poorly made, not according to the up-to-date standards. Our soldiers are sharing those photos and they're saying that those defense lines are not really good, and this picture is mostly the same in all of the Pokrovsk direction. The guys on the ground say that the quality of those defense lines is very poor. Mostly those defense lines are not finished, so our soldiers have to do it on their own, so they have to finish the job of those engineering organizations who started it at first. That's how our guys waste the precious time. For example, they are fighting in this direction, then Russia moves over here, and the Ukrainian soldiers had to retreat a little, for example, to this side, but the defense lines here are not really prepared, so our guys have to prepare those themselves, making it difficult to fight against the advancing Russian army. It's the real situation on the ground. I'm saying things as they are. Well, not just me, but also the deep state military source and many other Ukrainian volunteers, soldiers, military bloggers are just screaming that something should be done. So reforms absolutely should be done, not just inside the Ukrainian army, but also inside those organizations, engineering companies which build those defense lines. Usually they've been financed by the local governments. For example, Pokrovsk administration invested a part of its funds in building those trenches. Guys, if you like the videos which I film on YouTube daily, you may also consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link for my page right in the video description below, so thank you so much for maintaining my motivation. There is also a difficult situation in Selidova. As you can see, Russia is bypassing this settlement from the south. So it was yesterday, it is today, but I showed you before that the Russian attack from this side just failed because of the Ukrainian javelins and drones. However, Russia continued to press Ukrainian army with their massive attacks. They continue their mid-waves hour by hour. Because those are mostly infantry strikes, I cannot show you those videos on YouTube because of those terrific images, and I usually share sometimes those on Telegram, but from the very far distance, not zoomed in images of the Russian soldiers being in a terrible state, because that could be disgusting. But for you to understand what is happening, the drone videos from the far distance are pretty much okay. Alright, something is happening in Rostov Oblast. Several of the kabooms were heard from the local airfield, and also you may see this image of fire. Well, actually there is now a huge drone attack coming from the Ukrainian side towards many of the Russian cities. You probably know that this week Russia changed its nuclear doctrine, and they say that they may respond with their nuclear weaponry on the drone strikes from some sort of the country which has been supported by the Western country as the United States, which has the nuclear weaponry. But something tells me that Putin is just bluffing. He will not use nukes, well, at least for now. There was also the attempt to kaboom the railway bridge in Saratov. As you can see, the railway itself is okay, but the part of the bridge was significantly damaged. It happened by the time that the train was going through the bridge, and there was the kaboom over here, but the explosion wasn't that powerful, so the train successfully went across this bridge and the railway itself wasn't really damaged. But again, it shows that there are some of the sabotage groups acting inside Russia, far away from Ukrainian borders. The Ukrainian military intelligence claimed the responsibility for eliminating the Russian colonel who was the chief of the Russian Giran drone project, so the Shahid drone project as well. He was found in the Moscow region, totally kaputted by someone. Again, the sabotage groups are acting inside Russia, which is not a surprise, by the way. You probably know what happened to the Russian ammunition depots recently. Yes, 3 main Russian ammunition depots were kaputted by Ukrainian drones. Well, now we know that inside of the Tarapets ammunition warehouse, Russia put those very rare air defense missiles for their S-400 systems, and all of that stuff was just kaboomed with the help of the Ukrainian drones. Absolutely great job done by Ukrainian drone operators. By the way, we're gonna see tomorrow morning the result of today's attack on the Russian infrastructure. But sometimes the relatives of the Russian soldiers are quite happy about their loss, because they may obtain the keys from Lada, probably. ЧВК Wagner, it's the Wagner group, and everything is alright, as you may see. They're happy. But sometimes the Russian soldiers are not happy themselves. For example, this Russian soldier was put in the cage after spending 1 day on a tree. He says that in a cage everything is good for him because he has some of the food, some of the water. I wonder how he's doing his toilet stuff, but anyways, he was put in this cage because he was drunk. He took one of the Russian motorcycles, one of those Chinese bikes which Russia uses to storm Ukrainian positions sometimes, or just to move around, so he rode the motorcycle and he crushed it. Because of that accident, Russians lost the motorcycle and they decided to punish the guy by locking him into the cage. But I think that this guy should be grateful because he'll have a couple of more days to stay alive. I mean, being in a cage is still better compared to the destiny of those guys on this sidecar motorcycle. I shared the video on my Telegram. Here I cannot show it to you. What I can say that they cosplayed the Ghost Rider. The chief navigator of the Russian Pacific Fleet got the heart attack during the marathon run and capitated on the way to hospital in ambulance. Kind of the interesting loss caused by kind of the interesting factor. The Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov in the United Nations said that no country is able to win against the nuclear superpower Russia. Well, Ukraine already showed that the Russian Federation could be attacked and no red lines exist in this case. I mean the red lines which Putin allegedly put on himself. And about the nuclear superpower, well, there was already the Soviet Union, the mighty power. It was much more powerful compared to the current Russian Federation with its economy, military resources and nuclear warheads, but still the Soviet Union lost the war which was ongoing in Afghanistan. Yes, the Soviet Union was forced to withdraw the forces from Afghanistan without reaching its goals. Well, you may say that Afghanistan is far away and now Russia borders Ukraine. I agree, but by that time the Soviet Union also was bordering Afghanistan. So the nuclear superpower here absolutely doesn't matter. The United States, nuclear superpower, lost the war in Vietnam, also was forced to withdraw the forces from Vietnam without reaching its goals, and the Vietnam until today is ruled by the Communist Party. So what Lavrov says has nothing to do with reality. Russia has all the chances to lose in this war. The main idea for Ukraine is to continue to resist and sometimes also push Russia, as Ukraine did in Kursk Oblast, and as Ukraine does with the strikes on the Russian military facilities, Russian infrastructure, and so on. The Lavrov's words are telling that the Russian elite is in panic. We cannot lose this war, come on. By the way, their nuclear strategy doesn't really matter because it's not obligatory to be used by the Russian army, so those are just papers for the papers. Look at us, we are so crazy. Putin is ready to use nukes, but after all, Putin is the guy who values his life, and all of his kids are mainly abroad. By the way, as the kids of the all-Russian elite, including Lavrov's son. Well, there is no precise information about Lavrov's son, Sergei Lavrov Jr., but his daughter Yekaterina Lavrova was born in the United States and studied in London. And that's what we may say for all of the Russian elite. On the Russian propaganda TV, they're all against the West, but all of their kids are there. So would they bomb their kids? All the Russian rhetorics about nukes is just total bullshit. Alright, Russia signed an agreement with Burkina Faso for not deploying the weaponry into the space. With Burkina Faso for not deploying the weaponry into space. Well, I guess it's one of the most important agreements that was signed by Russia recently. Alright, after meeting with Chinese delegation, Blinken says that the Chinese peace plan doesn't add up. Just to remind you, China wants to let Russia to occupy the part of the Ukrainian territories, but China still wants Ukraine to stay as the sovereign country. Brazil supports China a lot, but Russia has its own plan. They want to occupy all of the Ukraine. It's understandable. The Ukrainian peace plan is basically to deoccupy all of the territories, including Crimea, so there should be some of the levers to cause Russia to withdraw their forces from the occupied territories of Ukraine. But we need to be honest, those levers are just absent for now. Ukraine doesn't have enough resources for the counterattacks, and Ukraine doesn't have the nuclear weaponry. That's why many of the mainstream media sources start to write that Zelensky is thinking about the possible negotiations with the Russian regime. But we haven't heard from Zelensky or Ukrainian government that they want to negotiate with Putin, and we haven't heard from Putin that he is willing to negotiate with Zelensky and willing to stop the fight at least on the current front line. No, Russia wants to continue to scroll, taking more ground from Ukraine. Unfortunately for now, Russia has initiative, but still it's not the significant breakthrough Ukrainian front lines as it was, for example, in 2022. So Russia requires hundreds of thousands of new army men, plus the military resources, vehicles, tanks, and so on. So this long-term war is actually exhausting Russia as well. Yes, Ukraine is more vulnerable to that because Ukraine itself is much smaller. For this reason, it's important to support Ukraine. For me, it was opening that Switzerland supports this China-Brazil initiative on Ukraine. So Switzerland actually agrees to give the part of the territory of Ukraine towards Russia. Well, at least one Swiss official responsible for the foreign affairs called about it. It's not really the policy of the country because this pass has not been yet voted by the Swiss parliament. Those officials usually say some strange stuff sometimes. Quite a sad news for the Russian Ahmad battalion. Now the Russian Duma, so the Russian parliament, is looking to block TikTok in Russia because they say that there is more threat for the Russian Federation even compared to Telegram. Just to remind you, Russia wanted to block Telegram a few years ago, but they failed with their attempt. But it seems like with TikTok they are achieving their goals because there are outrageous reports in this platform in Russia. Alright, I finally confirmed to you that definitely Hassan Nasrallah is no more. The news about his kaput at first were shared by some of the media sources in Israel. Later on, it was confirmed by the IDF and finally by Hezbollah itself. Well, actually, the entire Hezbollah leadership is no more. All the military commanders, excluding one Abu Ali Rida, were caputed for the last couple of weeks because of the Israeli strikes on Lebanon. Well, maybe this guy knows something because he's the only left without virgins. Well, it's the huge dramatic hit towards not just Hezbollah but also towards Iran because Hezbollah was the largest proxy army out there. But Iran already responded on a strike. Well, that response was really hard and outstanding. What they did is they light up their pedestrian bridge in Tehran in red colors. Yeah, there were some of the meetings, but those might happen as usual. For now, it's the only difference after the Hezbollah movement was definitely beheaded. You know, after the Hezbollah leader kaput, we were all waiting for one more huge strike from Iran, but it seems like majority now understands that there are more words from Iran than real actions. They cannot do anything with Israel. And we know that so-called Iranian leader Khamenei went to his secret bunker. By the way, Russia condemned the attack on Hezbollah movement, saying that Israel went too far. Now we know who is who, and guys, I'm also telling about those international events because they are interconnected with Ukraine as well. The main characters are the same. We're speaking about the global conflict. Those guys supply Shahed drones to Russia, Russia supplies technology and the fighter jets to Iran. Probably even nuclear technologies, so Israel, who fights against this regime, is for now Ukraine's ally. My friends, now please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so you help me a lot, and as usual I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are and have a great time.